And let's see if we got him here. Mike from around the world. Are you there, Mike?
Pastor Paul, God bless you, brother.
God bless you. It's great to have you with us. I tell you, you and I just had a great conversation the other night, recording your presentation for Climate Chaos, and that was a barn burner. That's the best you've ever done.
Well, that was a sneak peek into, something very real.
Absolutely. And Mike, you know, of course, last Thursday night, you dropped a bomb on us when you said, oh, and by the way, April 25th, look for some type of maybe natural disaster or something. And boy, our phone is rung off the hook. We must have 100 emails on that subject alone. I even got a phone call from a very prominent follower of these Thursday night. He's been following you for about 9 years. He just said, you have to ask him, is it still on? Is April 25th still on? And if so, can he share some information? So, Mike, let's start with that. April 25th, where are you at with that?
When we were talking, in this time that we're in right now, it is important that nobody hold back any godly revelations. It is important. Everybody's going to see a dismantling of what people trust in so much, called science, right? It's just not going to hold up. And deceit is going to it's going to be so in depth that it's going to be very difficult to trust any information coming out in the first place. And if people are not comfortable with, have real integrity behind revelation, they're going to be left in the dark. And the 25th, in or around the 25th is what I said.
Okay, right? Yes.
In or around the 25th, a natural disaster. Because if somebody would be so bold, Pastor Paul, I'll tell you, if people would just step out in faith with what the Lord gives them, not what they're thinking about, not what they assume will happen, but real revelation. Because I know that, listen, I talk to people a lot. And from the strangest sources, God's given revelation all over the earth.
Oh,
The problem is people do not trust what the Lord is giving them. And what normally happens is after an event takes place, they'll say, God gave that to me. He gave that to me. And I didn't say a word, right? Because they're uncomfortable stepping out in faith. They don't want to be made a mockery of. They've got to get to the point where they're walking in faith. They can't care about mockery, people slamming their name or anything else. If we're going to represent, we've got to represent all the way.
So I think what I'm hearing you say, and I agree with you 1,000%, is people are afraid to speak the prophetic revelation they get from the Lord because they're afraid of being ridiculed in case they are off a little bit, because it's very difficult when you get dreams and open visions to absolutely understand it to its completeness. And sometimes we think we know, we fill in the blank, and we might be off a little. And people are afraid if they do that, they're going to have the whole world jump on their back and call them a false prophet. If that was the case, Jonah was the biggest false prophet we ever had, because he ran into this city for 40 days and said, look, God's going to blow this place up. And when the 40 days came, God didn't do one thing because they repented. And so then Jonah said, now everybody's going to think I'm a false prophet. No, his prophecy was true, but God changed his mind. Now, what you're saying is God's given you a revelation, some type of revelation insight for in and around the 25th of April of a natural disaster. And you wanted to say, look, I need to just get this out there. I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to throw it out there. And if people want to beat me up later, if I'm off, and if I'm right, well, it's because God said it, okay? And if I'm off, well, maybe I misunderstood, or maybe God changed his mind. The point is, what you're saying, Mike, we got to quit being afraid to go ahead and share what God's revealing, and we as a church have got to quit judging each other over and nitpicking every little thing. And if we'll do that, working together, we'll get more fresh spiritual revelation. Is that what you're saying?
Because they're going to miss it. What makes a person want, it's just like, take the 25th, for example. Also last week I said that I didn't want people to get upset over a policy that will be introduced this week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so what came out this week already? Well, we had the generals, they got together, right? The generals did. And in fact, a lot of brass got together, and they were discussing nuclear war.
Yep.
They were discussing very real war. So what they did was, there are 7 policies that came forward yesterday, right? Yesterday, concerning nuclear war. One is a snap. There are some different procedures that used to be in place and checks and balances. Well, because the time intervals are too long, now there are snap policies that have been passed yesterday, and which gives us the right. We can react almost instantaneously. And the reason why is, and then not only that, but right after they talked about that, here we have a missile near a nuclear facility.
Yeah.
That almost hit. So things like this. Now, does that mean I knew this beforehand? No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I knew nothing about it. But what I was doing was trusting in a word that's just already in me, just like it's in you, just like a word is in every single person in that audience. They know something, but we know things in part, the Bible says.
Right.
We know things in part. But as a whole, we have a whole picture. As a single individual, we only have a piece of what is. God did not give one person everything. He gave everybody some small piece. And collectively, we can have the whole picture. I have seen over the last, 30 years, science fail and fail miserably. If you don't believe me, just look at the vaccines. Look at COVID-19. And people, here's the funny part. We constantly redirect our trust back in those people who can work science, right? This is what you hear right now. I don't know why everybody is not catching this. And I can't be the only one. But I hear on a daily basis, trust science.
You're right.
No, I'm not trusting science. Do you know what that statement actually, if people knew the background for that statement, they wouldn't accept that statement too much, because you have people now forcing this upon other people. Trust science. It is forging policy. Some other policies went into play concerning COVID-19, concerning civilian movements around COVID-19. But everybody's saying, trust the science, trust the science. So much so that it's becoming it's really a vice.
It's kind of becoming
really forming policy.
Yeah.
It's causing, for example, there's some scientists that moved away from South Carolina. Why? They're trusting the science, right? Because of this climate chaos. The scientists are moving away from the East Coast. Right now, they're moving. They're selling homes. They're getting out of there.
And they're going to, from what I understand, they're going to either the Ozarks or they're going to Denver. They've
been doing this for a while. Do you know why? Because their calculations are showing something. But here's the bad part. I can take some charted data back from 1985 and show you that some of what's happening in the world, they're not going to escape jumping into the mountains. There is no clear place to run with that.
No.
You can't run. They can't run away from that, because wherever they go, that's going to, we face more of a danger from earthquakes than we do flooding on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And they're scared of these storms. They better be scared of volcanism and earthquakes. That's going to be the next, a pretty bad thing.
Let's move into that. And, oh, by the way, there is a scripture in the New Testament, guys, that says, believe not science falsely, okay? Paul warned us of this, and it's part of the strong delusion, just something to keep in mind. All right, Mike, climate chaos. Here's what we know. Today it was released that a massive, humongous is the word they're using, a humongous solar flare erupted on the nearest star to us, which is Proxima. I think it's their... that star is only 4 light years away, about 20 trillion miles away. The solar flare eruption on that was so insane that that star became 14,000 times brighter than it normally is. Meanwhile, we had a powerful C 3.8 solar flare eruption on our sun today, sending CMEs in our direction. It sounds like the volcanism. We know what we've been dealing with St. Vincent Island. We know what Iceland has happened. We know there's now your prediction about Italy. There's a volcano there right now that's starting to smoke, and it's trembling, which could set off a massive earthquake right in the area you've been talking about. So there's different reactions are going on. But what can you tell us? Is this... And the scientists in the articles I just read, they won't say that a binary system caused this massive explosion on this other sun. But are we starting to see the effects of an arrival of this binary system?
I would say yes. I would say that we've been seeing an increase in global activity regarding that. And these scientists are not going to come out and say that because they're compartmentalized. Their grants cover a specific area. If they go outside of that area, well, they just voided the terms of their grant. They won't get paid. Scientists normally, when they go out and research things like that, they're paid by the government or institutions which are backed by the government and governed by some sort of Congress, right? Not our Congress in the White House, but a type of Congress. And so they have to restrain themselves and stay within the confines of whatever the money pays. But we see the changes we spoke about so long ago. They're happening. It's a conflagration of events of just about everything everybody's been talking about. They're starting to happen all at once, almost in an overwhelming fashion, because the frequency at the times they hit, they're becoming greater and greater. You know, these things are becoming very intense. For example, I know that nobody's supposed to be able to predict a volcano. Oops, not so, because NASA came out and said they could with a satellite, which it was the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life, because somebody brought that to my attention and said, Mike, somebody said NASA, they can predict volcanoes by monitoring a 1 degree Celsius rise in the surface temperatures. That was the dumbest thing I ever heard, because they've been doing this since the 80s. The same thing they've been doing since the 80s. When they come out with these things publicly, that's an indication or warning to much more than the public that we're on very destabilized ground, very dangerous ground. If an organization knows something, right, and then they utter it to the public, they're sending out a message for those who are smart enough to decipher it. For example, the term full stop. I'm sure that people are becoming familiar with that term.
We've heard
that full stop is used by officials. It's not just used by anybody, but by officials.
Heidi and I have heard that term full stop now 4 times in the last 7 days by different officials, different levels of officials here in the United States and Canada. And she kept saying, here it is again, here it is again, here it is again. Right. So this full stop must be some kind of code word. Is that true?
I shared that with an audience in 2015. In 2014 or 15, I shared that, and I asked people to remember that. Because what it implies, and I told them when it happens, you know, when they keep uttering this term, we're going to be talking about the nuclear talk will start to reach a peak. That's precisely what I said in 2015. When you hear this term, full stop, the talk about nuclear arms is going to reach its peak. And then an accident probably will follow. Let me just explain to you how things work. For example, yesterday, on the 21st, when they passed these policies concerning nuclear weapons, and it is a grave concern of many American commanders that nuclear war could easily break out at any moment. And it's not a joke. So when they pass these policies, all of a sudden, there's a missile that hits in 13 kilometers outside of a nuclear facility.
What?
In Israel.
In
right?
Israel, yes, in Israel.
They have Iron Dome, right? They have Patriot missile systems out there.
Yep.
They have several other intercept systems, none work. Now, I don't know about Iron Dome, but let me tell you about the Patriot system.
Okay.
It is impossible that Patriot not intercept something, because you have to manually turn it off and tell it not to intercept. It will automatically triangulate everything that leaves the ground. It's going to prioritize. It's going to do this fairly quickly. It'll prioritize, and it will intercept anything out there. It takes an operator in that radar room to say, no, don't do that. So somebody has to, they have to put it in a no-go status. You have to manually do that, or it's going to launch by itself an interceptor missile. So does that make sense? That they have this talk about a nuclear threat, and all of a sudden a missile launches in the Middle East and almost hits. But then any type Iron Dome in those systems didn't pick it up.
No.
The professors are going to use their standard throw-off line, which is, Iron Dome works for 95%. There's always that percentage it won't work for. This wasn't any ordinary missile either. Nope. This was something a little on the order greater than what Hamas has. And it's a known fact because it's going to be let out, if not let out already, that Iran can touch every part of Israel right now with their missile systems. Every single part of Israel is under threat right now directly from Iran. They have missiles capable of doing this.
Who turned it off,
because
Mike?
they have Russian missile systems in Syria, Russian missile systems in Iran right now. They can reach Israel, and this will eventually begin to build up. So, having said that, Pastor Paul, there's almost like a playbook they can't help but to go by.
Who turned off the... So who turned... Look, you're right. It's a Patriot missile system. It's the Iron Dome system. And it's what they call David's Arrow and Sling, which was a collaborated system by the United States and Israel put together, plus several other ones that you know about that I don't know about, right?
A few more.
Okay. So somebody had to turn the switch off, right? Off the entire grid? Are you saying that? Who would do that?
There's no way all those missile systems did not intercept this thing. But there's just no way.
Did the United States
have redundant close
Mike?
proximity a laser grid that they can actually, help defend themselves with. So that's
Mike. Did the United States turn it off? And the reason I'm bringing this up, back in the days of the Obama administration, there was a lot of leaks out of the White House that compromised Israel several times. Trump comes in, all of a sudden all the leaks stop. Israel seems to be more secure. Things seem to tighten down. We're 2 months into a new administration, and we got missiles going through the best sophisticated defense mechanisms in the history of the world. What's going on, Mike?
I tell you what, that's just unnatural. Now, I do know this. Those missile systems are under Israeli control. They're under Israeli control.
Okay.
It happens so fast that the only way somebody could be involved and say, no, do not intercept, is if somebody friendly launched that missile, in fact, right, which that wasn't the case.
Right.
And if it was a failure, that's a catastrophic failure, right?
Yeah.
So I would say this, Pastor Paul, I would say that this nuclear talk, and it's also important that people understand something about nuclear weapons. They are not the most dangerous weapons on the planet. That they're not. They really are not. And all this old equipment is now, they're using things now. They're sneaking things in. And things are being done like Russia buzzing U.S. ships in Alaska. That just recently happened again.
Wow.
If you didn't know that, it was a bomber. Not just any ordinary plane. It was a bomber that was warning U.S. ships in Alaska. And then you have the UK running drills right now. They're actually chasing some Russian ships right now. All the armies are training how to detect Russian ships is the point I'm making. And so all this is happening while you're hearing the term full stop. Full stop, by the way, it doesn't mean stop what you're doing. Full stop means it's near the end. That's what full stop means. Full stop is a word that is not going to, it's always going to be used out of context. It's not going to make sense when it's used. And it means things are coming to a full end. In other words, there's a flip of a page from one era to another. And I'm telling you, it's going to go out with a bang. And this is going to be something men will do. It's going to be in conjunction with something celestial, but it will most certainly take place. And I said that back in 2015 as a warning, because I didn't really want to revisit that subject again. But for those people to remember, hey, there's some information that, people have information about climate chaos. They have it about war. They have it about weapons technology. They see people going absolutely crazy. They see a loss of faith. The world has become immoral to a high degree. And churches are now, you have places like yours are still holding on, but there are other places that are totally compromised because of finances and money and things like that. There's a problem in this earth, and iniquity is filling up everything quick. And so it's going to change the way we live our lives very quickly without warning. And we're going to find ourselves in the middle of a mess. For example, just as they warned the other day, we could be sitting around right now, and all of a sudden, you hear sirens, going off. You don't know what they are,
right.
But then you have an impact, maybe 4 or 5 impacts into the U.S. Imagine this: if those missile systems fail to detect that missile, right, which they cannot, that was not some ordinary missile. number one. So you have two choices here. You can believe that somebody turned it off, or you can accept that there's higher technology being used.
That's what I want to bring up. I don't believe that the United States turned it off. I believe that the Russians and the Iranians and the Chinese have more superior equipment than we give them credit for. As a matter of fact, I think that you've been saying that we don't have a clue at the technological advancements that Iran has. And so I think when this happened, if Iran wanted to hit that nuclear facility, they'd have hit it. They wouldn't have just missed it by 10 miles. They did that. They wanted to see if they could get the missile through the defense system. They did. And then they saw that they could put it where they want to. Now they know what they can do. And now we know what they can do. This is a game changer. That's why you're hearing, I think, what you're saying, that these top brass are talking, they're meeting, they're talking about new policies of rules of engagement as relates to potential thermal nuclear war. So, Mike, let me ask you, had they hit the Israeli nuclear facility and it had detonated at least one or more nuclear bombs, what kind of world would we be in right now today? What would have been the reaction if that would have happened?
It would have been a meltdown. Remember that nuclear rods are kept deep in the ground, right? The water's pumped, very hot water's pumped through them. It could have, first, it would have caused almost an instant meltdown because it would have damaged the pumps. Then you could have had a reaction. If that warhead goes off where the rods are, it's going to be those rods will be included in that nuclear reaction from that weapon, and then you have a real problem because that will increase the yield of the explosion. And then because it's deep into the ground, you're going to have an upward thrust and fallout all throughout the Middle East, of which hardly anybody can escape. I mean, we just had, Israel is almost complete because the Ethiopians are almost completely now reclaimed in Israel, which was the lost element. Anyway, that's another story. But there would have been a problem there, and it would have hurt. Because if we're situated, it would have hurt more than just Israel. It would have taken out a lot of Hezbollah forces, a lot of Iranian proxy forces. So, it's almost like they were saying, hey, we can get you when we want to.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I think.
It seems like.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think that's the game-changing move. They just proved that they have some superior technology that we weren't aware of.
It's not the first time. No. Remember the drones. Yes. Remember they took our drone and landed our drone.
Yep,
they
right.
took over the electronics in a high-tech drone and landed it without any damage, really.
What about the Israeli missile facility the day before exploding on its own out there? What's going on? I mean,
well, we have some back and forth things going in Israel. It's no known secret. They're going to do that back and forth. But I guarantee you, very soon, without warning, no public announcement, no indication, there's going to be an accident of war. And what I mean by that, something is going to be launched, or something is going to happen with on a large scale that nobody intended to really happen. When you start doing this back and forth, you always get these out of control internal groups that will in fact operate on their own. Orders get jumbled, things like that happen, and then all of a sudden you have a strike order that nobody really approved or something along those lines. And that's a very dangerous position. This is what most of the leadership in the U.S. has concern about. When you have this many people in theater, in operation like that in the Middle East, and Russia's included, we have every single army out there. Something is bound to happen because there's no real coordination of those forces.
Let's talk about Russia.
Something is going to happen.
Let's talk about Russia then, because I think it's tied in. And I heard you say it, when you say Iran, you say Russia. When you say Russia, you have to say Iran. And Turkey seems to be in the mix as well. Let's talk about the fact that Russia, all of a sudden today, just announced they're leaving. They're pulling back from Ukraine. They said that in 2017 in Syria. They said, we're done. Our work is done. We're leaving. They're still there. They'll never leave. That hook's in the jaw. What do you think about that, Mike? Is this another bait and switch move?
Yeah, they say it every year. That's Putin again. Putin will always. Putin is he's always going to do things according to Putin, and so he did this. He does this every year. If you pay attention, he'll do it every year. They have drills. He'll say, "Okay, we're done. Let's bring him back." But they never go back. They're always lingering behind, right? Remember, he did the operations near Alaska, and he said, "Okay, we're finished. Mission accomplished. they're still out there.
Yeah.
They're still flying missions out there, right? So Putin does this every single time. Here's the problem. While he's positioning everything all around the world, people just sit there and say, okay. They say, okay, all right, he's done, he's going back. No, and one of the big mistakes, one of the mistakes in the White House right now, right, and I'm not judging anybody or anything like that, but we had an aggressive president when it came to defense policy, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I may not agree with everything he did, right? But that aggressive, sometimes you need a stonehead person who's not going to give in to anything. To run a country. It's just like if you want to start a business, you don't need someone who's going to laugh and joke the entire time, because you have to forge your place in that community. And you have to do a lot of PR and everything else. On down the road, you can act friendly because you know everybody. So there's a time and a place for everybody, which is what really got me about the populace. They don't understand that. There's a time and a place for everything.
Right.
And we need stern leadership right now.
Yeah.
People are, not only are people falling apart in our own country, but you're not going to appease Middle Eastern folks right now with policy and promises. It's just not going to happen.
No.
They're going to do what they're going to do anyway. Iran, how many times in 2012 were people told that we were 1 year away from them having a nuclear weapon?
Yeah.
How many times did people fall for that? From 2012 to 2018, 19, and 20, people are saying, they got 1 year, they'll have a nuclear weapon. Let's go ahead and face it. They already have them. Something is wrong here. Now, there's rhetoric. All politicians, every single last one of them, doesn't matter who they are, they use rhetoric. What they shouldn't do, right, is have the people believing in that rhetoric to the point of confusion, because they'll lose it. Nobody trusts any word from authorities right now for that very reason. And it's really going to bite us this time. We're in a time now where people are very volatile.
So, Mike, I guess
for some reason,
question.
people are believing in esoteric things more than ever.
We're hearing,
that's a
Mike,
mixture, deadly mixture.
We're hearing, Mike, and there's questions came to me today, is Russian submarines off the coast of Miami or along the East Coast. Is there any of that? Is there any truth to that, or is there any intel you can give us on that?
Well, he's been doing that, Pastor Paul. For example, North Carolina 2 weeks ago, right? Some shadow operation or shadow sighting took place. Russian submarine, right? That's what it was purported to be. Out in the Atlantic, there's a lot of noise, a lot of detection, a lot of everything going on, right? Now, sometimes in Florida, they will often have what's called a shadow sub down there. That's our stuff, is what it is. And so we train that way. They don't want the soldiers to know the difference. But keep in mind, he has a permanent post. Putin does in down there near Panama and those places, right? So keep that in mind. He's permanently down there. When we start drifting down to South America, Russia is there.
Venezuela?
Russia is running patrols and operations there.
Isn't Russia basically Venezuela, and then that kind of like their second home now in South America?
Oh, yeah, they're there. They're there. They're all the way up in Mexico.
Wow.
You remember our relations with Mexico kind of broke up for the last 8 years or so, right?
Yeah.
And so every time that happens, they end up with Iranian folks in Mexico. In fact, it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we found out, the world found out, there were lots of Iranian troops stationed right there in Mexico. That was 4 years ago. So,
part of this border,
is the type of world we live in.
Well, okay, I know the drug cartel gets blamed for everything that goes south and sour in Mexico, of which they are to blame for a lot. Let's be honest, but not everything. Is some of this smoke and mirrors? I mean, are they using women and children as human shields? Is there other things going on besides just drug and sex trafficking and human trafficking? Is there military? Is there cells, traitors, terrorist cells? Is there groups like that from other nations like Iran and Russia and places? Are they involved in this?
They're in the U.S. too. There are lots of cells in the U.S. until they activate, though, because they lost accountability of a great many of them. In 2013, is when they lost track of a lot of those cells that were developed through Iran right here in the USA. The only way to catch those guys is when they surface or do something. And you really have to be careful with propaganda. Politicians will always use propaganda. Right. See, this is why all of us, we need the Holy Spirit, Pastor Paul, because you can't even trust somebody's definition of the outside world, their description. You just can't trust that. That the Lord said, cease ye from man whose breath is in their loins. In other words, don't put your trust in mankind.
No.
We got to keep our trust in Christ, because if we're listening to politicians who have ambitions, they're going to make us think that everybody's our enemy, right? Based on for their gain, right? For their agenda. And we can't do that. The people over there in Russia, the civilians are just like us. The civilians in Mexico, they're just like us. The civilians in other places, they're just like us, right? It's the governments, the few who are labeling everybody as these monsters, right? And so we got to be careful not to look at the whole place as a bunch of beasts, but see it as it is. And sad to say, they're always going to have propaganda.
Has our military DEFCON status changed any, Mike, due to these events in the last 48 hours?
Say that one more time.
Has our military DEFCON status, has it changed any due to the events that have happened over the last 48 hours?
Well, that's a strange one, isn't it? Well, no.
Okay.
No. Not permanently, no. I know there's talk about it, but not yet. Not yet.
I mean, when that missile exploded 10 miles from Israel's nuclear location.
Their DEFCON, their readiness state changed, not ours. Not ours.
Okay.
If something happens in the Middle East like that, it's not going to change our DEFCON unless we really intend to react on that. Remember, if we change our defense posture, right, we're going to be engaged somehow. This is what's going to happen. We're going to be engaged. If we're not going to engage, we're not going to change our defense posture.
All right. Can we talk about the Black Sea? I mean, Russia's got like 20, from what I know of, at least 20 frigates or different types of military warships in the Black Sea. They are doing a major exercise. They said it's going to last till late October. Ukraine don't know how they're going to get their cargo through into the port. They've got over 100,000 troops on the border of Ukraine in Crimea, and over 100,000 Russian troops along the border of Ukraine with Russia. So what's going on? I mean, Putin's singing and dancing, but I mean, what he says and what he's doing is two different things. What about the Black Sea? President Biden said we're sending 2 of our military ships, and then 3 days later he said, nope, we're going somewhere else. What's going on, Mike?
Well, this drawback from Russia, number one, he said the troops have to be back by May 1st. Yet he's really not, he's really not going anywhere. No. Putin right now is very upset. He's very upset. There's an importance to Russia with Crimea. He's not going to give up on that dream. He will fulfill it. And in fact, Putin has fulfilled just about everything he ever set out to do. Just so you know that. If he has to wait 6 years, he'll do it. But he's going to do it. He's going to do it. Whatever he has in his mind concerning Crimea, and he's already made his declarative statements, he will do it. He will do it. And so he's angry. He gave a threat tonight. In fact, you know that, don't you? He said if anybody crosses what we have designated as a red line, there will be repercussions. He even said that to his own people, right? Because they're having worldwide protests over this gentleman that is locked up, right? Right. Not only was he talking to the people within Russia, but he was also talking to the countries outside of Russia. And of course, we know China is backing Russia in their movements, right? Which is going to cause a problem with India probably in another week or so. That's going to become a very volatile spot with Crimea. But he will ultimately have Crimea. He will. Either they're going to agree to everything he says, or he's going to, by force, take that country knowing that everybody else is going to stand around. This is what he does. He did this last time. He deployed his forces all over the world doing exercises, and next thing we know, he went right into Crimea and said it wasn't him. The entire time he was fighting in Crimea, he said it wasn't him. And what did the world do? Okay. That's what the world said. Okay. Right? Yep. So unless somebody's willing to intervene with Russia, he's going to do what he wants to do.
Yep. Mike, folks, this is Mike from around the world, and he's doing a great job in really telling us and giving us information that I think is vital to help us understand the current events and how they relate to biblical prophecy. We certainly can see Ezekiel 38 shaping up, and maybe even Zechariah 14, but also from the heavens. Mike's been honest to us, has told us many times, atmospheric compression, 5 waves of energy, extreme weather conditions, and now he feels, and it's not a prediction. What Mike's saying is he has been spiritually a revelation, he feels, that some type of natural disaster could happen in and around April 25th. I take it very seriously because I've seen you, Mike, make those statements before, and I watched volcanoes blow up, earthquakes hit, or 3 months before the pandemic started, you told us that millions of people were going to die in March in China, and no one even heard of a virus then. So when God brings revelation, I listen to it, and so we'll all be praying for whatever is going to happen on April 25th, that it's not real severe, or hoping that it's wrong, hoping nothing happens. But you're saying we need to be awake, need to be prepared for some of the things. Do you feel that volcanoes, there's 57 of them right now that are reacting. Could this be one of the natural disasters that you're speaking of?
It could be, and I'm still watching the one in South America, Pastor Paul, due to something very big. I know that in South America, I can't shake it for anything. Something is going to flow down there in South America, and when it does, actually something is unfolding right now that looks very similar to what I talked about a few years ago, and a month and a half ago. But South America is very volatile, and it does interrupt the Cocos plate. If that Cocos plate is destabilized, California is in big trouble, right? And people should be aware of that. That's a chain reaction. That's unavoidable. South America is waking up. We see the entire southern hemisphere starting to become very active. And it's only a matter of time before South America is some of those ancient spots begin to rekindle again. They already have heat plumes that are detected. The land masses are starting to rise, right, in South America. So, and they have some of the trees and everything. They're starting to die in certain regions, which means volcanoes are waking up in South America. So it's only a matter of time. And I think that a lot of people are concerned about timing.
Okay,
right?
wait. You said South America. You said what's getting ready to happen in South America would have a major effect on the west coast of California.
It would. Because let's face it, on the west coast, there is a fault that's very fragile. It's very fragile. It's also under a great amount of pressure, and it's not been relieved yet. And so that Cocos plate has always been one of the great shakers of that place. And they're kind of tied together. If we have a volcanic eruption in South America, however, that means the magma has weakened the continent. And that's going to have strong repercussions because the evacuation of magma is a loss of instant pressure in the earth. Well, if you deflate a tire, it's going to go down, it's going to sink. And that's exactly what happens with magma. So on one side of the earth, we have a lot of activity with magma, right? And it's also happening to the other side. It starts by trees dying, foliage dying, the ground rises, and then poof, right? You have a common rise of temperatures all across the land masses, and then boom, it goes. So we're going to be facing that at a time when it's going to sound strange, but at the border, right? And I've said this I said this a year ago, but I didn't say it here. There's going to be some activity at the border. A lot of people will be at the border during that time. But It's starting to happen. It's starting to unfold. And when that takes place, it's going to be a matter, it will be almost instantaneous, a back-to-back event for the other California to be interrupted.
Well,
so
you've said before, Mike, that you see a major earthquake or in Mexico that would actually cause the city of San Diego to just raise up like that and dump into the ocean. And you stayed with that. You have stayed with that prediction because it's actually being set up, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very disturbing. It's kind of like that coffin, right, at the White House. Same thing. It's very disturbing.
Coffin?
And again, I've never seen a person in a coffin before, but I saw that one. So, my goodness.
Is that still in play, Mike? Is that dream still in play?
Yep, it is. It is. And it's unfortunate, too, because given the other folks that are right now in Washington, it's too much tension. Nobody's on board with one another. And that would be a disaster, because that would be that just wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be good. There's a loss of confidence right now in how we are doing things to a degree with certain people. They're just watching to see what's gonna be okay or not, and it's going to be a problem for the entire world. We're looking at further destabilization by incredible mistrust of governments. That's just not going to be good. That's already happening with our product line. Come to find out, China cut us off. You know that, don't you? China did.
On what?
They cut us off, but they stopped their they are really pressing or putting the hammer on any exporting coming out of China going into the U.S. They have supplemented their income with other countries, is what they've been doing this entire time. So they cut us off. Well, we have most of our packaging done in China, right? We do. Most of our small businesses, they use products that are manufactured in China. Well, China has supplemented all those deals with other countries. So, other countries are in the spot we were back in the 80s. That's where they are right now. And China's working with them. They're not working with us. And they're cutting us off. This is going to reflect in all of our products here. Probably in 30 days' time, we're going to see, the further fluctuations on the shelves of the stores. But it's so amazing. It's like, Pastor Paul, people can't see it. No. They just can't see it.
Is that why?
And when they become aware of it,
is that why food prices are? We're hearing that coffee's going to go off the charts. That a lot of food prices and plywood and things are going to go absolutely sky high. Is it really because China has decided to walk away from the United States?
They were. If you think about it, they were 40% of our packaging comes from there. Just about every single household item a person has in their home, something on that item that's plastic or some thin metal was made in China. They can produce goods and services cheaper than anybody on the earth and kick it out at a pretty good, decent rate. But when that's cut off, you're looking at a price hike in just about everything. They were assembling most of the circuit boards that are found in devices. China, of course, there are even certain things that are stamped made in the USA, but they're assembled in China, right? So that's a price hike on everything. And then if you start shopping American-made products, the price is so high because it's like everybody wants to get rich off that one sale. So it's almost like you're in Greedyville when you go back to when you're shopping just made in the USA. Certain products like keyboards or computers or something like that, because even the HP computer or the Dell or whatever computer you have, a lot of those parts are made overseas. They're not made over here. That's part of the global initiative that they had. These companies would work alongside those folks, but China is starting to chop people off. The more they supplement, the more they're just cutting off exports. And so no doubt Biden is going to have to do some work in that area because that's just not good. That's kind of like this. I know everybody probably likes this government supplement check they're giving out, right? The $1,400. Pastor Paul, why didn't they just tell all the power companies, all the water companies, right? Just say, hey, don't bill everybody for 1 month, and we'll supplement that later. Just give everybody 2 months. 2 months. Give everybody 2 months off their utilities, right? Why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't they tell the corporations that? Because if you look behind the lines on that one, then you'll find out what the truth is, because they're spending money like it's just like it's no big deal right now. Right. And it's a lot of money.
A lot of money being printed.
But all of it gives an indication that somebody does not care about what's happening topside here.
Wow. Folks, Mike Around the World's with us. His presentation tomorrow on the webinar is the best I've ever, and Brock said it, Mike, when we filmed the other night. Brock said, this is the best Mike has ever done. These charts and these that you brought forward, these really helps us understand the big picture now, what's going on in this incoming binary system, and really it's a great presentation, folks. Mike, whenever you did that, do you feel that if people will watch that this will help them understand that God's in control? What will come away from that when they watch your presentation?
Hopefully it summarizes. It summarizes the events, and it kind of takes the because I know I talk enigmatic or in circles, people would say sometimes, and sorry about that, I have to do that, but it can simplify what people say. What I'm hoping most of all is, I tell you what, there are some great researchers out there. They do great work, right? I'm hoping they'll pick up on I want them to pick up on one thing, so they can fine tune the research.
So you're throwing some stuff out there so that some of these guys, like a Gil Brazard or a Steve Quayle or Mr. MBB333 and some of these other guys out there, or Laura Wells, or some really good ones, they pick up on something and then they turn and that gives them a little direction where to go and look.
Oh, they'll find it. Yeah, they'll be right on the money. I'm passionate about that, Pastor Paul, because I know that nobody has complete information. Because, I've spent some years having the completed information, not being able to even utter anything, and it's frustrating. Watch people do honest research, yet they do not have the very
limited
basic
tools,
elements that they need to complete that research. Yeah. And somebody out there has it, right? This is why I talk. And if people would notice, even about my speech, if they would just hear my speech again, they'd notice it's all there. It's just, I talk in a specific way that may take you a couple times to get it, but it's in there. But I can't stand it when people are researching things and you have folks that know simple things, Pastor Paul, not classified things, just simple things.
Right.
But they will not share it. It is stricken from every book. And it's so hard to convince people and say, look, they have changed the science books. They have changed the physics books. They have changed these things.
What?
And people will say, well, what do they change?
How do you trust the science?
Why? Because they're sold out to science. They don't understand. I still have physics books from the 80s, right? They're different than the books now. I still have certain things in those books that they would blow your mind, but they took them out in this day and age. It's almost like, suppose one day they were talking about the number 1 or the number 2, right?
Yeah.
So they refuse to say 2 anymore. So now they say 1 plus 1, right? Or 3 minus 2. So that's what they're doing, confusing everything. They're taking a long way around, and nobody can absolutely have the truth or grow beyond their control. And it's a control mechanism. It is forming the way people think. And for the most part, people are in a delusion. A delusion is not coming. It's already here, right? And people are being given over to it. They're believing in the system they were born in. But I'll say this. A child that's born in jail and has never seen the outside of that jail will not call that jail jail. He's going to call it home. It's going to be natural to him. Only a person who's free can actually see it's a jail. But the people inside won't understand that unless they've been on the outside.
Mike, the next 24 months, if there is 20, let's just, look, we've got this debris field coming. There's no doubt about it. I don't know if it's 24 months away, if it's 36 months away, or is it already starting? Seems like it. We've got a lot of fireballs and stuff. Do you see... how could it get any more extreme? Weather, hail, rain bombs, typhoons, cyclones, blizzards. Could we? In the next 24 months, Mike, are we going to see an uptick in these areas?
Pastor Paul, number one, volcanism.
Volcanism, number one. Everybody write that down.
Volcanism is going to turn into a big problem because we've just dealt with eruptions. We've not dealt with some of. Have you ever heard of black ash before?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to have some volcanoes, which are made up of some very strange materials. And so it's going to look like spider webs and black ash all over the place. Now, if we were just to deal with one of those big ones that would blow in the earth, not Yellowstone, something on a smaller scale, everybody would be sick for months. Okay, that's a big problem. Homes would just cave in from that fallout.
The heavy ash,
It would be catastrophic. We would lose every single crop that's out there. We would lose our food, and all the animals would die within 6 months, right? And it will be, animals only have 6 months. Even for a moderate eruption that would spew ash around the world, animals have 6 months, right?
Yeah.
6 months. That is a food crisis, okay? That's also an atmospheric changer. So we're going to deal with volcanoes and a building of these particles, particulates in the atmosphere, which is going to be very tough on breathing. Right. Yeah. Just like, what was it, about 5 years ago, I told people you're going to start having a lot more pains in your joints and muscles. Oh, they say, why? I couldn't quite explain it then because we weren't there yet. There's not much of a demonstration so people can understand it. But I guarantee you 60% of people across the earth have more pains in their joints, even the young kids, than they've ever had before, and they don't understand why. They don't understand why. Because from Earth's perspective, right, if you had a little ant farm in a box, but you took that box up into an airplane, the ants are not going to know anything, except they're going to notice there's a difference in how they move because of pressure. Yeah. The same thing is happening to us. We don't notice a pressure event, but we're most certainly going through a pressure event. Because we're on Earth, we are in a sealed sphere, right? We don't notice a big difference. But there's a big difference all around us. And that difference is becoming more and more notable. And this is an external issue that will continue to build. That will continue. And number two, the weather. We haven't seen the weather. And we haven't seen a real storm yet. With all of what we've seen, we have not seen a real storm yet. But I suspect we're going to start seeing them as soon as it gets warm. Right? Okay. As soon as it gets warm, when it is moderately warm, all over the place, then we're going to see a storm. They're not going backward either, mind everybody. They're not going down in intensity. They're rising in intensity. And we're going to have a problem. There are two major problems we're going to have for a while. Water and wind. Water and wind. Those are going to be the weather phenomena we're going to have a big issue with. Water and wind. We're talking about winds that are sustained, winds that will upset the oceans. Those oceans are going to drive further melt, which is going to release more water back into the ocean. Fresh water is going to evaporate, go up into the clouds. The AAD value is going to go up. The retention potential is going to go up. So when it rains again, it's going to drop more moisture down in places that never had rain. Arizona, I'm talking about you. You're going to be you could potentially turn into a flood zone 3 or 4 times this year. So flooding is going to become something people are going to have to get used to. But the winds are going to be very damaging. And this is very real. This is going to take place. This will be this year, not next year. And so that's not even including celestial issues. Because with what we have coming, right, we still have a buildup of debris. We're going to see a lot of impacts on this earth prior to the main body coming through us. And when it comes through, we're going to be stuck in that thing for a while. So that's something we're going to have to really deal with on a day-to-day basis. No one's going to save themselves by knowing the date. They're not. No. Because once it starts, it'll begin to destroy methodically everything, piece by piece, on a continuous basis. Just think of a hailstorm that won't stop. That's all you have to think of.
But you're saying it's a meteor storm.
For 2-3 weeks, nothing would be left. It would beat down everything so much, nothing would be left. So this field we're about to start to enter into is going to be the same way. It's going to continue to pound at the earth until, what? And we've not been in this area before. But we're going to find out all about that. So it's not knowing the time is not going to save anybody. Knowing who you are and knowing Christ will potentially save your souls.
So you're saying,
but Pastor, when things get,
put it
they're
all
going to get
in a
worse,
box,
right?
You're saying
they're going to get worse. People will see that.
Yes.
Nobody's going to have to tell anybody that something drastic is happening. We're not going to have that conversation.
So
the next conversation is not going to be, what's going to happen next. It's going to be, how do I avoid? What's going to happen to me when I die? Everybody's going to start turning spiritual or into maniacs. That's what's going to happen.
So what I'm hearing you say, Mike, is, and this show, what you've been doing in our interviews with you over the last 8 to 9 years now, has been to establish a baseline to the people of the world that the events that have already begun are only going to intensify greatly times 10, maybe times 20. And as that's happening, it won't matter what the timeline is, because it's going to be about who are you with Christ. Because you can't do anything to stop it. You can't do anything to protect yourself from it other than be already under the protection of the Lord. That He is your strength. He is your shield. He's your buckler. He is your hope. He is your provider. And that these scriptures are not just nice jingle, nice little ring and everybody shouts. These are survival. The most important survival kit in your life is your Bible and your relationship with God. Is that what you're saying, Mike?
Yes, those are words of life. Those are living words. And if we believe in them, if we really believe them, then we'll prepare for that word to come to pass. I never prepare for an event to come to pass. I found out a long time ago that does no good. I have to understand that when I'm inside of that event, who am I going to be? And the only way I'm going to know that's to establish who I am in Christ before anything happens, and learn to be a consistent individual with Christ in times of peace, trouble, chaos, whatever the case is. I won't change. But I'll remain the same because of Christ. My footing in Him is sure, no matter what comes or what does not come. I'll be secured in Him, because these events, again, the people are not going to get the warning they think they're going to get, Pastor Paul. They're just not. I can't emphasize that enough. Even celestially, when somebody spots it, I'm telling you, it's going to be too late. It's going to be too late. There will be so many events happening on the earth. No one's going to care about anything in the heavens, and then it will come and add to the trouble in their lives. And we've been born in a time right at the door of this stuff, because let me say one more thing. Most of the people listening to me, I'm gonna say something about you. You were born with revelation already in you. You can't explain it. You were born with a knowing of Christ. You were born with a knowing of the living God, and you could not accept how the other Christians were talking passively about Scripture. You had the urgency in you. So you need to remember that, because that's for a reason. What was in us when we were born signifies the time that we're going to live in. And we have a job to do in preparing other people spiritually in truth, operating in these times, not to run away from it or escape it, but to know of it in detail enough that we can comfort somebody else when they're in their trauma in this storm, because many will come to Christ when they are pressured by these things. That's when they'll let go of believing in this nonsensical stuff out there in the world, and they're going to say, I need to be saved. But they're going to do it in time of calamity, of trouble, and we need to be able to operate in that trouble and calamity.
Amen. Mike, one last question before you get away, and I know tomorrow is the webinar. It starts at 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Guys, get your ticket tonight, please. Get your ticket real fast so that we can get you in line and get your link headed to you at exactly 6 p.m. Eastern. Mike, they have announced there's going to be a major disclosure of they're going to unclassify UFO information. Why are they doing it, Mike? What is the issue?
Because it no longer matters. They were given they're under the gun and the clock. So I tell you what, when a worse thing comes, that's when they let go of the little things, right? That'll be considered little compared to.
Is it part of the strong delusion, or is it doesn't matter? It's what's getting ready to happen.
Yeah, that's going to be a small, tiny, little bitty thing compared to what everybody's going to have to walk through. Listen, Pastor Paul, this is going to be something that will challenge the faith of the best of people out there. And it's a lot of people are going to find themselves, they've been serving it to a degree already, right? Because they don't know. If we don't know something, right? Because a lot of people believed that their education was right on the money until they became a Christian. And the Lord said, no. And then we found out, wait a minute, I can't put my own life in this, right? We only knew the truth. When we learned the truth in the Word of God, that's when we found out that we were potentially serving something we shouldn't serve. Well, I'm telling you now, a lot of people right now are going to find out they've been serving something they should have never served. It'll be a breakaway moment. It'll be one of those moments in the world that's going to challenge a lot of people's faith. There's going to be a lot of scoffing, right? People will say, oh, where's your God now? your Bible doesn't talk about this and that. It'll turn into a type of talking war,
yeah.
right? Where for a lot of people, they won't be able to handle what's coming out. But they've reached a point where most of the individuals who were accountable for secrecy in the first place, they're gone. They're gone. And this generation that's coming up, they're so acquainted with monsters and everything else, they don't care. So because all of the immorality that's coming to the world, nobody cares what sexual orientation you are or anything else. You can swap it 5 years, do whatever. Because we're so immoral like that, they're going to introduce the other element behind the scenes. They've always had a timeline. And it's becoming unavoidable, right?
Yep.
People will see live demonstration before their face. It'll be a time of faith testing like nobody has ever seen before, and probably nobody will ever see again. But, yeah, they're going to disclose, but to my understanding, Pastor Paul, it's not going to be just a bunch of photos. They're going to release also video footage, detailed information about talks and interactions and so on and so forth. So, that's...
Well, that sounds
going to be a doozy.
Well, that's why that'll be our next webinar, folks, in case you want to know. It's called Aliens, Angels, and Demons. And Mike from around the world is going to be one of our speakers, and he'll be giving us some info. You'll be able to share some things with us you've never been able to share, right, Mike?
Correct. And you know what? I really anticipate the day, Pastor Paul, when and that day is coming soon, when people are going to have their demonstration, but at that point, then many things will come forward in many different places. It's more diabolical than anybody could ever think. It's by no means a passive issue. It is right at the core of our faith, that type issue. And there'll be some disclosed things. We'll talk about some things that people really need to be aware of right now. They really do need to be aware of.
Mike from around the world, folks. Well, I really appreciate it, Mike, being candid, being open with us tonight. Great word, and I'm with you 100%. We got to keep telling people the truth, and then we got to get them to Jesus. He is the way, the truth, and the life. And
yes, he is.
Keep doing it. We'll see you next Thursday, Mike, Lord willing.
Well, God bless you, Pastor Paul. Everybody remember who you are.
Amen.
God bless you.
God bless.